organizations in particular states. But in the end, who will pay for all this? The question is rhetorical. So what happens? We are destroying the existing energy industry, but we have not yet created a viable replacement. At the same time, this raises the price of the resource without which no person can survive. During this year, the price of CO2 emission quotas in Europe has doubled. As a result, prices on energy markets have risen as well. In October 2021, prices per megawatt of energy in Europe were 6 to 8 times higher than in 2020. Consequently, this affected the economic situation in the world, which had a direct impact on the well-being of every person. But back to the topic of climate. More than 20 years have passed since the Kyoto Protocol was signed. According to a report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, total climate finance for 2016 to 2019 amounted to $287 billion and is growing each year. Most of this financing was allocated to projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. According to the World Meteorological Organization, CO2 levels reached a critical point in 2020. After every international treaty, CO2 emissions have been measured, and we see that in 2021, despite enormous funding, the emissions curve is skyrocketing. There is another important point. Have all these measures helped solve the real climate problems? Do we see a reduction in the growth of natural disasters and weather anomalies? Has the ecological situation on the planet improved? Have we started to live in a safer and more comfortable world? Solve the real climate problem.
I'm really honored to be a part of this critical conference because global possible a picture of what's really going on around you. The problem right now is we've all surrendered a certain amount of our power to centralized authority, and they're trying to use that to take over energy and food and media and education and everything. But so what we need to do is get rid of the centralized authority, but then collaborate as sovereign individuals. Most people have never thought about this, in my experience, that a government, a nation state, is a fiction. It's an abstraction. It's an idea. It doesn't exist in reality. It's actually a network of real individual human beings. So it always and forever comes back to the individual taking action. I'm really, and we've got our ethics upside down because if you put the government ahead of the rights of people, I'm really honored.
Для меня большая честь принимать участие в этой важной конференции. И ведь само ее название — «Глобальный кризис. Время правды». Лучше и точнее не скажешь. Мы переживаем кризис, и только правда поможет нам выйти из него. Правда естественным образом приведет нас к созидательному обществу. Это и есть выход. И для меня большая честь непосредственно в этом участвовать. Если мы хотим защитить себя и своих близких, нам необходимо располагать как можно более точной картиной того, что на самом деле происходит вокруг нас. Сейчас проблема в том, что мы все отдали свою власть централизованным органам управления, и они пытаются использовать ее, чтобы захватить контроль над энергоресурсами, пищевой промышленностью, СМИ, образованием и всем остальным. Что нам нужно сделать, так это избавиться от централизованной власти, а затем сотрудничать как независимые личности. Исходя из личного опыта, могу сказать, что большинство людей никогда не задумывались о том, что правительство, государство — это фикция, это абстракция на уровне идеи. Его не существует в реальности. На самом деле это сеть отдельных людей. Поэтому все и всегда сводится к действию отдельно взятых людей. Мораль и нравственность у нас перевернута с ног на голову, потому что если ставить правительство выше прав людей, что, к сожалению, и происходит, причиняя столько вреда, то в итоге уничтожается индивидуальность человеческого духа. Весь этот хаос, который сегодня творится в мире, загрязнение окружающей среды, насилие, болезни и угнетение, очевидно, с точки зрения Вселенной, все должно было дойти до такого предела, чтобы критическая масса человечества проснулась и сказала: «Нет, хватит. Мы возвращаем власть себе, мы высвобождаем наш созидательный потенциал, и мы будем процветать». Я верю, что так и будет. Долгое время я писал статьи и выступал, информируя людей, что причиной глобального потепления не является антропогенный фактор, что это обман. Но в то же время очевидно, что загрязнение окружающей среды — это серьезная проблема, и на планете происходят огромные пиковые изменения. Но исходя из имеющегося у меня опыта, это происходит вследствие влияния Солнца на нашу планету и из-за особенностей расположения Солнечной системы в нашей галактике. Я не эксперт в этой области, но я знаю, что это глобальные процессы. Так что нам нужно подготовиться. Думаю, что нам необходимо восстановить целостность природных систем, и тогда мы действительно сможем решить любую проблему. Те, кто пытается заставить нас платить этот мошеннический налог на выбросы углерода, это те же самые люди, которые крадут наши деньги через бумажную валюту, через частичное банковское резервирование, а также уничтожая бизнесы людей в условиях локдауна, а затем скупая их недвижимости. Это те же самые люди, которые прячут технологии свободной энергии и лекарства от рака в секретных военных и разведывательных проектах высокого уровня, вместо того, чтобы поделиться ими с человечеством. И они используют предлог антропогенного глобального потепления для того, чтобы попытаться удержать свое богатство и власть. Поэтому мы...
Consumer format to the creative format would be smooth and without losses for people. And of course, so that the honorable secretaries would be satisfied. Only a fool would demolish his house and stay on the street. First you have to build a new one where you will live, and only then break down the old one. Otherwise, we live on the street like wild animals. What our esteemed speaker just said is true about the consumerist format in which we live. In fact, it is known information, and we are so used to these kind of things that we take it for granted because it is natural to the consumerist format, and no matter what we do, taking someone out, someone similar will come in place. It is impossible to kill a dragon because when you kill it, you become a dragon yourself. And this is the rule of the consumerist format. And we need to define other norms. We need a creative society. The problem is not in us, but in the format, in the rules of the consumerist format, which have been formed over centuries and millennia. The consumerist format is anti-human, and as a consequence, from here originate lies and deceit, because everything is done to please the wallet. Those who have got their hands on the trove care only about their wallets, and there can be nothing else in the consumerist format. And we must understand this. Therefore, the old, outdated model, which no longer works, must be replaced by another model. As of today, there is only one real alternative, and that is the creative society. Should you have any other ideas, do suggest them. But as of today, the model that allows us to combine scientific research and development potential to counter the challenges of the future is only one. The current consumerist format we are already living in will not withstand the onslaught of the forces of nature. We have already seen many facts proving its worthlessness, and only a fool does not realize this. So, humanity is at the crossroads. There are two options: to leave everything as it is, but this is an euthanasia of all humanity, or to radically change the format of our existence from the consumerist format to the creative format.
Now I would like to introduce Professor Thomas Lovejoy, an innovative and accomplished conservation biologist who coined the term biological diversity. He is president of the Amazon Biodiversity Center, member of the National Geographic Society.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you. So I have been working on conservation, tropical rainforest, the Amazon, biodiversity for about half a century or more. First set foot in the Amazon in 1965, right? And although there clearly has been important progress in those decades, we now are at a moment when the biology and the climate of the planet are in a crisis state. So when I arrived, the Amazon, which is equivalent to the 48 contiguous United States, it's really huge, right? The Amazon was 97% intact. I mean, just think of that. Now it is around 20% deforested, especially in the south and west in Brazil, where it's threatening the hydrological cycle that it actually nurtures. And basically, it's right at a tipping point where if we don't do reforestation, at least the southern and eastern Amazon will no longer be able to have rainforest growing. The hydrological cycle, which the Amazon forest nurtures, provides moisture to every country in South America except for Chile. So it is a continental scale contribution. So in the Amazon, that makes half the rainfall. North of New York City, it provides the water for the city, which nobody seems to notice. So ecosystem services loom large in our daily lives. So point number one is protecting the forests we have. They have values as mature forests that secondary forests do not have and take a long time to get. So just stop cutting down the natural forests, whether that's the Amazon or whether that's the boreal forests of North America or Europe and Russia. Just don't cut down any more forests. To the extent that you need wood products or products that come from forests, get them from forests that have already been managed or even mismanaged. The reality is plantation forests are basically a monoculture. They're almost like a giant asparagus patch. So not a lot of biological diversity lives in them. And to the extent that we want to get multiple results from reforestation, improving watersheds, protecting species, we have to think much more thoughtfully than planting a bunch of matchsticks. Well, I would say number one, recognize that the planet works as a linked physical and biological system, that our well-being depends squarely on that. So it's critical that we do things at scale, starting right away, and that we not approach it as just simply about forests. It's about all natural ecosystems. About 96% of all biomass of mammals is humans and their domestic animals. So all the other species are sort of sitting there at the end of a straw trying to get the last drops out of the glass to survive. None of that makes any sense at all. Each time you lose a species, it's like 3.7 billion years of evolution and solutions to sets of biological problems unique to that species. It's like a giant green library. It makes no sense to burn down the living library of the life sciences.
Hola a todos. El estimado profesor nos habló de los valiosos que son los bosques. Dijo que debemos detener la deforestación en todo el planeta y tenía razón. Amigos, imaginemos solo en los últimos 100 años, el mundo ha perdido tantos bosques como en los 9.000 años anteriores. Esto es un área del tamaño de Estados Unidos. Soy originario de Ecuador. Mis padres crecieron en el campo. Aman la naturaleza y me inculcaron ese amor.
Greetings, everyone. The honored professor told us how valuable forests are. He said that we must stop deforestation all over the planet. And he's right, friends, just imagine. In the last 100 years, the world has lost as much forest as in the previous 9,000 years. This is an area the size of the United States. I'm originally from Ecuador. My parents grew up in the countryside. They love nature, a love they instilled in me. I grew up among the forests. And now it hurts me to see what is happening to them. More than 20 years ago, we lost about 40% of the national territory of the pure Amazon because of an absurd war, because of human insatiability and excessive greed. And now the little that remains is being cut down. This is not just a problem for my country, it's a problem for the whole world. To meet global demand, we are turning rainforests into grazing and animal feed grazing, plantations of soybean, palm oil, coffee and cocoa. From 50 to 90% of the total area of deforested tropical forest is illegal logging. Forests in the temperate latitudes are cut down mainly to sell timber. Today, logging has led to the destruction of 75% of forest in the United States and British Columbia in Canada. Each year, 26 million hectares of forest are cut down. And every minute, an area of forest equals to 60 football fields. And this area is being cut down in the world. As we can see, the rate of forest loss is simply catastrophic. The catastrophe is that, in addition to active deforestation, we're now witnessing an unprecedented number of fires. This year, fires in Siberia, the United States and Canada have destroyed 25 million hectares of forest. This is comparable to the area of Beijing, Moscow, and Dubai combined. The main cause of the fires is climate change on the planet. But we, in the pursuit of profit, are adding fuel to this fire that has already been ignited. In our society, it is often economically unprofitable to extinguish forests. But it is profitable to sell the burnt forests. We went even further. In addition to this, there are deliberate arsons. This manipulation makes it possible to sell forests that have been banned from logging. The arson scheme is standard. The forest is set on fire so that it burns only from below. Such a fire damages the roots of the trees, but does not destroy the wood. After the fire, the authorities conduct an examination of these forests. More often, a decision is made to cut them down. Then, a tender begins, an auction, and purchase for the right to cut down this forest. This is how the mechanism of selling legal, quoted Marx, timber is launched. Let me give just one example. So in 2016, 25 hectares of forest in the reserve were damaged by unexpected fires. People were seen not far from the source of the fire, and in 2018, this burnt forest was cut down in this reserve. Damage from that logging was later estimated at $27 million US. This kind of working scheme is used all over the world. In the consumer format, people do terrible things. People don't realize that the felled timber is already becoming our common coffin. We see it, and we're tired of being silent. Today is the time of truth, and we appeal to everyone who cares, who understands what's going on. Various environmental organizations have spent so much time and energy trying to change at least something, but it's all in vain. We, humans, were unable to stop. We couldn't save the forests. And it's very scary to admit this, but we need to admit this, because without it, we can change nothing. Existing forest conservation methods don't work in our today's society. We can have the best grain, but if we plant it in oil, it'll die. We can have the best ideas for the protection of forests and ecology, but in the consumer format of society, it is impossible to implement them, because after all, everything boils down to making money. We need to change the conditions, the format of the society, to the creative one. How can this help protect the forest? In the creative society, the highest value is human life and its quality, not the capitalization of individual citizens. Therefore, the technologies that are not beneficial to be introduced in the consumer format of society today will be introduced in the creative society. In the creative society, we will be able to restore forests. We will be able to start up recycling plants all over the world, even in the transitional phase of the formation of the creative society. We have no more time for doubts and disputes. Every hour without the creative society brings us closer to global environmental disaster and to our death. We have no spare environment and no spare forests. We have no spare planet. Now, we know the truth, and the choice is ours.
The way we have been cutting down trees, we won't have enough lumber for a coffin. We are destroying our planet. Don't we see that this is already affecting everyone? Money has closed our eyes and common sense. With the speed that we litter and trash our planet, it seems we are replacing trees with the trash. Do you understand that in the consumer society, trash literally costs more than a human life? Take a look for yourself.
And Ed, we pass the word to you.
Thank you, Olga. I will talk about rubbish for a little while. One of the most serious environmental problems today is the problem of waste. When people first started collecting waste and sending it to landfills, it seemed like a great idea. All of the waste was collected in one place where it was easier to sort and bury. Thus, it was supposed to solve the problem of it. However, something went wrong. In total, the amount of waste has increased dramatically over the past 80 years. Today, landfills are overflowing due to the appearance of non-degradable waste. Landfills did not solve this problem. They only ensured its circulation around the planet. And in this regard, the idea of recycling waste arose in society. Today, it is believed that it will rid the planet of waste. In many countries, people honestly sort waste, give plastic for recycling, and believe that by doing so, they are saving the environment. So again, it seems that the problem is solved, but is it? Let's find out the truth.
Garbage. Recycling. Does recycling really exist?
Мусор. Переработка. Существует ли переработка мусора на самом деле? Каждый год мы выбрасываем более 2 миллиардов тонн отходов. Большая часть мусора в том виде, в котором мы его выбрасываем, не поддается биологическому разложению и не может быть надлежащим образом переработана. Он отравляет нашу воду, воздух, пищу, нашу жизнь. Индия, Газипур, свалка, которая с каждым днем неумолимо растет и уже почти достигает высоты Тадж-Махала.
Во время муссонов внутри полигона накапливаются газы из-за накопления отходов. Затем эти газы выбрасываются в воздух. В скопившихся отходах размножаются комары, которые затем кусают людей в колонии, вызывая у них такие заболевания, как денге, малярия и тиф.
Джакарта, берег реки Цитарум. Здесь расположено более 200 текстильных фабрик, которые производят дешевую одежду для всего мира. Ежедневно в реку сбрасывается 20 тысяч тонн отходов и 340 тысяч тонн сточных вод. Они загрязняют реку свинцом, алюминием, железом и марганцем. Согласно данным отчета Всемирного банка, пластик, бумага и картон, металл и стекло составляют 38% муниципальных отходов. И только 13,5% из этого вторичного сырья фактически перерабатывается во всем мире, а это чуть немногим более 5% от общего количества мусора. Несмотря на это, наши темпы производства и потребления только растут, как и свалки вокруг нас.
На уровне потребителя, то есть первое звено, обыкновенная семья, да, обыкновенная семья ходит в магазин, в этой обыкновенной семье получается какие-то коробки, стекло, пластмасса, полиэтиленовые пакеты и так далее и тому подобное, да. Очень модно стало абсолютно все это сваливать в одну кучу, это одну большую кучу прессованного материала везут на какой-то перерабатывающий завод, и этот перерабатывающий завод якобы абсолютно разделяет этот весь мусор, и у тебя, соответственно, получается чистый картон, чистый пластик, чистый того. Это идея. На самом деле это все не работает. Чтобы у тебя выделить тонну переработки, ты тратишь просто какие-то неимоверные ресурсы только для того, чтобы собрать, привезти, отсортировать, потом это надо отмыть, потом это надо запаковать, потом это надо куда-то привезти, продать. Весь мусор, если это именно мусор, его закапывают, никто не перерабатывает этот мусор. Перед другом хвастаться, говорят, что мы абсолютно зеленые, то есть у нас там все 100% переработка, у нас нет никакого мусора и так далее и тому подобное. Обычно нанимают компанию, которая увозит этот мусор, нанимают какую-то еще дополнительную компанию, которая там считает этот мусор, разбирает этот мусор, пишет процентные отношения, потом ты как бы посылаешь репорт. В следующий раз, когда конференция проходит в каком-то конференц-зале, они могут говорить, вот у нас там абсолютно 0% мусора. Но, честно говоря, это все делается на бумаге. На самом деле этого нет. То есть получается, теперь надо потратить гораздо больше денег, а никто к этому не готов, никому это не надо. Никто не хочет размахивать зеленым флагом и при этом платить какие-то сумасшедшие деньги.
Переработка несовершенна. Мы можем делать намного больше и намного лучше. Большую часть переработки, которая осуществляется во всем мире в настоящее время, не следует называть переработкой. Ее следует называть даунсайклингом. Это означает, что бутылка перерабатывается в нечто совершенно иное. И как только она проходит процесс даунсайклинга, она не может быть использована повторно. То есть качество пластика снижается. Мы бы не смогли ее переработать, даже если бы захотели. Поэтому мы должны задать себе вопрос, почему такие виды пластика вообще разрешено производить, если их невозможно переработать или как-то еще использовать? Сейчас я бы сказала, что единогласное мнение ученых и факты говорят о том, что мы не очень-то знаем, что можно и необходимо делать с океаническим пластиком. Некоторые шаги уже предпринимаются. Океанический пластик перерабатывают в обувь, купальники, одежду для йоги и тому подобное. Но весьма сомнительно, что это лучшее, что нам следует делать с океаническим пластиком. Возможно, тем самым мы лишь откладываем разумное решение в долгий ящик, что создает гораздо больше проблем, чем решений.
Для сравнения, один из сортов пластика PET новый стоит примерно 500 евро за тонну, переработанный примерно 1000 евро, а переработанный океанический пластик еще дороже. Производителю совершенно невыгодно делать себестоимость продукта в 2 раза выше. Более того, в условиях жесткой конкуренции его товар становится нерентабельным. Фирмы, занимающиеся переработкой пластика, идут даже на то, что добавляют в переработанный пластик большую часть нового и продают его под штампом «вторсырье» – «recycled». Задекларированные данные по переработке мусора зачастую отличаются от реальной картины. К примеру, в Германии часть мусора, которая считается переработанным, уезжает на свалки в страны третьего мира. Подобная ситуация в Японии. В процент переработанного пластика входит также тот, который просто сожгли. Так что мы считаем переработанным мусором? Тот, который попал в облака и стал нашим воздухом, а потом с дождем и водами вернулся в нашу еду? Мусор – это гниющее лицо потребительского формата общества. И мы убиваем планету, и даже больше. Мы убиваем себя. Нам невыгодно перерабатывать мусор. Нам невыгодно разрабатывать технологии, которые бы очистили нашу планету. Но нам ли это на самом деле невыгодно? Или потребительской экономике, которую мы же сами и поставили выше человеческой жизни?
Greetings. What we have seen right now, this is terrifying but necessary truth. As you can see, all of our efforts to sort garbage and supposedly recycle it is a lie. People are just playing this game, comforting themselves with the thought that something is being done to solve the garbage problem while continuing to produce even more waste. In the endless race of consumption, more and more goods are produced, which quickly turn into garbage, and even if it's sorted, it still remains garbage in landfills. In the consumer rules of the game, being green is not profitable in practice, and this is well illustrated by the example of ocean plastic. The largest ships, funded by millions of dollars, are only able to catch 2 tons of garbage per day. This makes the resulting plastic very expensive, and the
Мусор. Переработка.
But being considered green is extremely profitable, as it is an opportunity to manipulate the feelings of people who want to help preserve the environment, and the status of a green product encourages them to buy this particular product. This is why today we are hearing more and more about products made of recycled plastic. And by buying them, people feel they are contributing to saving the planet. But few people know that this is often just an advertising trick of the consumerist world. The same sneakers made of ocean plastic contain, at best, 0.1% of the plastic that was actually caught in the ocean. So we have already realized that it is not profitable to recycle garbage in the consumer society, but it is profitable to claim that you can supposedly solve the problem of garbage, which no one wants to take care of, because it smells bad. In a consumer society, garbage becomes a source of colossal income for those who do not hesitate to ruin people's lives in order to make good money on it. While some are waving green flags, others become garbage barons, endangering people's lives. Right now, I would like to suggest you to watch the video about this terrible problem of consumer society.
Мусор. Мафия. Как только в мире появился неразлагаемый и токсичный мусор, появились и те, кто делают на этом деньги. Мусорная мафия. Как действует мусорная мафия? Италия.
Мой Шурин перевозил отходы. Он рассказал мне о прибыли, которую можно получить в этой сфере, и я сказал, простите меня, черт, мы так рискуем, торгуя наркотиками, и даже не можем заработать этих денег. 30 лет назад я сказал этим судьям, что мусор – это золото. Деньги, деньги, деньги.
Мафиозные кланы Коза Ностра, Каморра, Дрангета покупают территории и делают из них свалки. И хотя на бумаге все может выглядеть законно, все же в основном эти территории для полигонов находятся возле жилых поселений и нарушают все экологические нормы. Важная часть бизнеса мусорной мафии – это нелегальная перевозка индустриальных отходов. Если предприятие хочет избавиться от своих токсичных отходов и при этом заплатить как можно меньше денег, оно передает отходы мафии. И вместо того, чтобы утилизироваться надлежащим, но дорогим образом, эти отходы вывозятся и потом исчезают.
Я поместил отходы на эту свалку. Когда мы закончили здесь, мы заполнили вон ту. Там, похоже, пышный лес, а под ним свалка. Когда те места переполнились, мы перешли на другие. Вон оттуда и до того места. Здесь есть все. Медицинские отходы, радиоактивные отходы, городские отходы, шламы, нефть и так далее. Здесь есть все. Рак. Все они умрут от рака. Грунтовые воды здесь полностью отравлены. Каждая семья здесь заражена. Каждая. Никто не спасется. Они здесь, потому что у них нет выбора. У них нет возможности переехать в другое место. И они вынуждены умирать. Умирать здесь.
На территории Неаполя и окружающего его региона компания, экологи насчитывают не менее 1200 маленьких и больших нелегальных свалок. Количество фосфора, ртути, мышьяка в этом регионе в 400 раз превосходит установленные нормы. Согласно медицинской статистике, люди здесь умирают от рака в 2 раза чаще, чем в среднем по всей стране. Контролируя мусорные полигоны, мафия не только получает несоизмеримо завышенную прибыль, но и имеет возможность контролировать города. Так как стоит им запретить ввозить мусор на свои полигоны, город превращается в свалку.
An average landfill can produce about 150 to 200 tons of...
Мусор. Мафия. Как только в мире появился...
per kilogram. Accordingly, you can multiply that same 100 tons by 13 cents. We'll take the minimum. Well, that's the profit only from polymers. Waste paper is now trading at around 20 to 27 cents per kilogram. Precious ferrous and non-ferrous metals are even more expensive. That's why people are like sitting on a gold mine there. Yes. Well, no wonder it's called the garbage mafia. You can't just get in. There is a huge income and people will never give it up for anything because these people are sitting on a pot of gold. Getting permission to use this land for a garbage landfill is extremely difficult. If we establish some serious organization, serious landfill, put the right equipment on it for sorting and all that, then I think we will quickly be visited by bad people and some inspections. My friends at one time bought an incinerator. They operated it for 3 months. Then men came in black jeeps and simply forbade them to work by threats and intimidation or something else. They just took over this garbage plant and that's it. And my friends washed their hands of it and said, that's it. We will never get into this business again.
These are individual cases, but aren't these the same schemes we see at the global level? Garbage migrates from one country to another, poisoning the lives of millions of people. And all this happens in the shadow of private agreements. No morals, no ethics, purely business. Indonesia. In 2018, imports of plastic into this country totaled 283,000 metric tons.
The distance between the landfill to my house is about 500 meters. My whole family, my relatives, everyone is affected by the noise and smells.
60 to 70 containers arrive illegally every night in the city of Brunking in Indonesia alone. Garbage, which is then found in landfills, is brought in from Australia, Germany, and the United States. Most of the time, it is sorted plastic mixed with hazardous waste. Malaysia. The once beautiful country is now covered in mountains of garbage and dozens of illegal incinerators. Manufacturing companies in Japan, the United States, Germany, and Australia is bringing their refuse to Malaysia.
My daughter was a very healthy girl. Since April, she started having a fever. Her state worsened, and she started spitting up blood.
Most owners of illegal factories rent land from local residents and build primitive ovens where they dispose of garbage for money, with no concern for the environment or the people who live nearby. Turkey. Since 2004, Turkey's imports of garbage from EU countries have nearly tripled. The main exporters of this garbage are Britain, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Italy, and France. A big part of the garbage that enters Turkey is not recyclable and is simply dumped in landfills.
European citizens need to know this. Clean streets in Germany, in the United Kingdom or France, where people sort their waste carefully. Well, it doesn't end up in recycling facilities. As you can see behind me, it's here where there are mountains of illegal waste.
Africa. Custom officials in poor African countries are unable to monitor the thousands of containers that come in from around the world every day. Often they are accompanied by false legalizing documents. Almost all of the e-waste or barrels in these containers are filled with toxic materials. They are accepted in these countries without too many questions asked. A small bribe allows any refuse to be smuggled to its final destination. An abandoned beach, a forgotten stretch of coastline, untouched waters turning into a dangerous radioactive ocean. This ain't garbage, it's waste for some, but for many in these countries, it is place of work, life, and death. Ghana, Egbokloshi landfill, the world's largest and most dangerous electronic waste dump. More than 200,000 tons of electronic waste from Europe and North America are brought here every year. Kenya.
It's like the dump site has demons who ask for blood. There are days when there is just too much evil, seriously. You hear of people killing each other. Someone stabbed someone else with a knife or killed someone with a bottle. Sometimes you also hear that the trucks...
Alang ship breaking yard is the biggest in the world. The government and the contractors make a lot of money. But there are two major problems: the environment and working conditions.
Here, on 10 kilometers of the beach, 40,000 people take apart half the abandoned ships from around the world. With their bare hands, piece by piece, day after day. They have no protection for hands, feet, or head, or no modern tools. There are no ship plans, and they don't know at what point or how a ship might suddenly collapse. They cut metal knowing that the next cut could cause an explosion. Half of the companies in the world don't want to pay for clean ship recycling using the modern technology. It's too expensive. Instead, they sell them for scrap. Indian buyers make a profit by reselling the steel. Alang is an environmental disaster. And at the same time, it is the biggest metal recycling in the world today. Similar dumps are found in other countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan. The price of this kind of ship recycling is human lives.
I have been breaking ships for 14 years now. My father was killed in a shipbreaking accident. The only thing I'm afraid of in the yard is death itself. I know this is dangerous work, and I am afraid because I have 2 children and a family.
We have never produced as much trash in our history as we do today. Garbage is dirty, it smells bad, but money doesn't smell. So in our consumerist world, there is always someone willing to take money off it. Storing refuse, fictitiously recycling it, or transporting it from more elite places on the planet to indigent is just business. A business in which the strongest survive. A business from which all life on the planet and man himself are slowly dying. A business that each of us sponsors every day. Can we stop it? Continuing to support the consumerist format of society? No. Because now all conditions have been created in order to earn huge money on such frauds. But we can change the format of our society from the consumerist to a creative one. When the 8 foundation of the creative society are adopted at the constitutional level in all countries, such schemes will be impossible to pull off. Because the main value in the whole world will be the life of human. In such conditions, there will be no place for all this dirt on this planet and in relations between people. Any business will be built only on improving people's lives, not on our death.
It's sad to look at all this, but even sadder to realize that if we are now even killing people for rubbish, then what will we do when we really need to distribute every piece of bread in a reasonable and humane way? So let's answer this question now, but very honestly. It's time for us to wake up and to remember that we are human and Earth is our only common home. The first law of ecology says everything affects everything and everything is connected to everything. No matter where the waste is buried in the globe, its environmental consequences will still return to the edge sea, because the Earth is round and the ecosystem is one for everyone. What is the point to continue these games? The truth cleanses and stimulates even more action, because only by understanding the cause of our problems, we can get rid of them. Together, we can do everything. We just need to realize that our strength lies in unity and in truth. The consumer format society is our main weakness, and the creative one is our strength and our only salvation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I asked myself, why are we still fighting? Even over trash. This is absurd. Don't we see the seriousness of the situation? Do we want to drown in trash, or do we want to become human beings and unite and build a creative society which will guarantee each person an ecologically clean environment, health, and safety? Dear viewers, I would like to ask you which choice you would like to make. Please share with us your understandings, record videos, and send them to info@creativesociety.com. I'm sure after the video we watched, each of us had feelings and understandings we wanted to share with the whole world. And now I would like to come to the next topic, which will blow your mind. You will understand why CO2 is the biggest scam of our time, and why green energy is a waste of money. Please don't forget to share this video right now, as everyone needs to know the truth. Let's watch together an excerpt from a video with the participation of Igor Mikhailovich Danilov on the topic of green energy.
Atmosphere, and how quickly everything is turning upside down. I mean, in certain areas there can be a sudden instant drop in temperature. After a while it normalizes, but these sudden drops may cause serious catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, we are giving up hydrocarbons. What does it mean? It means taking out thermal power plants, which you cannot build in a day if you need to, right? We are going to give up gas in favor of some solar thing. Well, again, the sun doesn't shine all the time. That's firstly. Secondly, how can we store that energy?
Right.
Thirdly, the winds that might arise. Wind farms are not quite adapted to them. And further on, they will become pointless in general. And we will face that.
And will you actually guess the right place where to set up this?
The point is different. Gusty, strong winds will simply make wind farms useless, even with all the automation systems and interlocks. That's not what is needed. What humanity really needs now is the correct hydrocarbon
heating plants, and thermal power stations. Yes, they emit carbon dioxide. They do. But they are necessary. And it will be worse without them. Plus small nuclear ones. They're compact units. Scientists are already developing them, and some people have been using them since long ago. That's what is also necessary. Something that generates power.
The world's attention has been focused on the problem of climate instability on the planet for quite some time. And this problem was first officially voiced back in 1992 at the Earth Summit, when more than 150 countries signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The world leaders attending climate change conferences in the years following 1992 agreed to set a limit for greenhouse gas emissions. It is assumed that this should be done through a global transition to green energy and low-carbon technologies, as well as reducing deforestation and increasing the capacity for carbon dioxide absorption in forests. And at the beginning of November 2021, the next UN conference, COP26, was held in Glasgow, gathering representatives from 200 countries. So, what did they decide this year? 108 countries have committed to reducing methane emissions. 100 countries have committed to stopping deforestation and planting 1 trillion trees by 2030. Many countries and companies have pledged to ban cars with internal combustion engines by 2040. 40 countries committed to abandoning the usage of coal power plants and adopting green technologies. Several countries and major banks have decided to stop financing fossil fuel production. And big finance companies announced to start allocating money for green energy, but only solar panels and wind turbines. At first glance, these decisions appear to make sense. However, we have to consider two things. First, yes, CO2 affects the environment, and yes, we did destroy the ecosystem of our planet. Second, the climate is changing, but for entirely different reasons. And while the proposed idealistic picture of our decarbonized future, when we all are using renewable, potentially free energy, looks very appealing, the actual situation with what is considered green technologies is not. Let's watch a video.
Today, everyone is concerned about climate change. Large climate conferences are being held where leaders of countries, scientists, and representatives of corporations are looking for solutions together. It seems that the problem is about to be permanently solved. We will all tighten our belts and switch to renewable sources. We are assured that if the chimneys of thermal power plants stop smoking, all nuclear power plants are closed, and they build solar, wind, and hydroelectric power plants everywhere on the planet, then by 2050, we will have carbon-free energy production. This will supposedly save the world, preserve the environment, and everyone will be happy. Therefore, it is suggested that all the best minds and resources of humanity devote themselves to the development of green technologies. But what are we missing? Will it really save us? Aren't we losing the most valuable things in all of this? Time and opportunities. A more in-depth study of the subject reveals obvious facts that point to a major planetary fraud. So let us figure it out together, one step at a time. Today, renewable sources make up about 28% of total energy. Yet in order to produce them, we still use non-renewable natural resources. All this continues to contribute to the depletion and pollution of the planet. Solar panels, for example, contain such heavy metals as lead, cadmium, and mercury. During operation, they leach into the ground and evaporate into the atmosphere. Waste from
solar panels is 300 times more toxic than nuclear waste and requires special disposal. But since it costs more than production, they decided not to bother with it and send the used panels to landfills in poor countries. So far, not a single country in the world today has regulations for their disposal. According to scientists' studies, by 2030, there will be up to 8 million tons of green waste in the world. And by 2050, these volumes will increase to 80 million tons. Let us imagine how these numbers would increase if we completely switch to these sources. Is this calculated in the reports? And is this topic explored that deeply at the conferences? As you can see, this only makes the environmental situation worse. And this is just the tip of an iceberg that we have to look into deeper. So what's wrong with wind farms? Let's start with our wallets, out of which you and I will have to pay for these ambitious solutions. To build a wind farm requires an enormous investment of money and resources. At that, the average lifespan of a wind turbine is 20 years, and during this time, it manages to recoup only 78% of the money spent upon its construction and installation. We are not even talking about maintenance, which implies building special purpose vessels, expensive utility high-rises, and constant replacement of blades. Just one wind turbine requires more than 500 tons of lubricants, which is comparable to 9 tank cars of railway trains, which, by the way, are also produced from non-renewable resources of the planet. Just think about it. The size of the blades can be as big as the length of a soccer field. And do you know what they are made of? That's right, of that very plastic that we continue to struggle with so unsuccessfully around the world. Because of their gigantic size and hazardous chemical composition, they can't be recycled. So the classic solution is that the blades are taken to landfills and covered with soil. After all that, do you still think wind power is environmentally friendly? Now let us take a look at the downside of hydropower. 65% of the world's major rivers are blocked by hydroelectric dams. At that, dam failures and breaches put lives at risk, and the planet's ecology suffers. Hydroelectric power plants directly affect the bowels of the earth. Tons of water from reservoirs press against tectonic plates, causing man-made earthquakes. We keep being persuaded that alternative sources will improve the environment and solve the issue of climate change. Why? Where does such pushy advertising of green energy and show of concern for us come from? After all, it is not profitable for the states that are forced under pressure to subsidize these projects and buy this energy at 5 times the price of traditional energy. Germany is a prime example. By shutting down most nuclear power plants in favor of green energy, it has hit a dead end. On best productivity days, it generates only 17% of its electricity. So, today, it has to buy energy with huge amounts of taxpayer money from the same non-green nuclear power plants in neighboring countries. Tell me, isn't that absurd? There is also another important fact worth noting. Renewable energy depends on the sun and the wind. So it must either be used immediately or accumulated in batteries. Yet, electricity is a complicated and expensive commodity to store. Let us calculate how many batteries are needed to store electricity and use it during periods without wind or sun or during emergencies. Imagine, an average 2-person family consumes about 235 kilowatts per month. Roughly 100 batteries of 2.4 kilowatts would be needed to cover one family's monthly electricity needs. Now let's recall that a battery is the conversion of electrical energy into chemical energy and back again. To create them, harmful chemicals are used that cannot be recycled. And in order to produce cobalt, child labor in underground mines in the Congo is used. All this is done to allow us to breathe supposedly clean air. To summarize, with such aggressive promotion of alternative energy sources, are we taking into account their low efficiency factor and impact on ecology? Do we fully understand the threat to humanity as a result of renunciation of hydrocarbons at a time of global climate change? Because of the manipulation of public opinion, states are forced to shut down industries that run on coal, oil, and gas. This leads to a crisis in the energy sector at a time when we desperately need it. It is becoming obvious that alternative energy sources are not only developed as a source of income for one and the same organizations and corporations, but most importantly, they are used as a tool to control the nation's energy industry. In the end, we are back to the same game of power and lust for profit instead of concern for people and saving their lives. But at the same time, many people see this as a hope and a way out of the climate situation. Considering all of the above, we should all answer the following questions together. Should we actively develop alternative energy if it has so many disadvantages? Is it beneficial for us as a humanity today? Or should we apply our efforts to a more effective solution? After all, today there are already technologies that are capable of using free energy. But in a consumerist format, this beautiful prospect becomes a problem. It would be impossible to sell this energy if it were available to everyone in unlimited quantities. So we come to a dead end, which would bring about collapse of the economic system, crisis, and wars. This is why we need the right step-by-step approach. First of all, to change the format, to build a creative society, a format that benefits absolutely everyone and will save the life of every person. Then we can easily implement this technology without any damage to our lives. But this is a decision we must all make together. So today, the future development of society is up to each individual, whether we will continue falling down into the abyss blown by windmills, or if we will unite and take the path of development.